These catastrophes were supposed to return periodically when the planets came together in certain signs of the zodiac. In the Persian system, we still find the deluge connected with a conjunction of the planets. Well, of course, what we could get into, and we haven't yet, is the periods of the planets and their conjunction cycles and how they fit into this model of the great year, because they do. With slight tweaking, all of the planetary orbital periods and their synchronicities fall precisely into the harmonics of these systems. And we probably won't have time to get into that for tonight. But the Iranians, like most of the peoples coming from a temperate zone, perceived an analogy between the year, the day and the night, and the human life cycle. This is a really interesting idea here. And who's got the calculator now? Alon, do you still have it? Okay, let's try something here. Generally, for many years, an average human lifespan was considered to be 3 score and 10. Or oftentimes taken, I think it just got bumped up, but for a long time it was rounded off as 72 years. You probably all heard that. Average human lifespan of about 72 years, right? Well, we noted that, put in the number of years of the great year. We could turn some lights on there for the moment. Okay, got 25,920. Okay, divide that by the number of years in the sacred or idealized year. So divide that by 360 and tell me what you get. 72. So now think about this. The wheel of the great year has 360 average human life terms in it. Now, of course, we're tweaking the numbers a little bit to see the symbolism in the relationships. So you could almost think that in terms of the great year, we talk about a 360-degree division of the great year. In terms of 360-degree division of the Earth's orbit around the sun, we're talking about 1 day, aren't we? So 1 day of the annual year, 1 day of the great year. And we discovered that 1 day of the great year basically conforms to the span of a human lifetime, right? Now let's take that span of 72 years, multiply 72 years times 360, and that's going to give us the total number of days in an average human lifespan of 360 years. What number did you come up with? 25,920. Say it again, louder. 25,920. Wait a minute. So in an average human lifespan, there are as many days as there are years in the great year. So we have this amazing correlation here. And see, these are the kind of things that you should actually think about, contemplate, integrate into your consciousness, because this is what the ancients were doing. See, the Iranians, like most of the peoples coming from the temperate zone, perceived an analogy between the year, the day and night, and the human life cycle. Well, we can carry it even further than that. These author here has missed the fact that they also carried it on and saw the relationship of a human lifetime to these greater cycles, and realized that the same proportional relationships were manifesting themselves irregardless of the scale of this thing. You see, so 25,920 days marks an average human life. Of course, I like the idea of the biblical lifespan better, the pre-deluge, because that was a factor of 10 greater. So that would be 259,000, right? 920 days. That's what I'm shooting for. Okay, we could go further with that if we wanted, but let's not. I just wanted you to see that relationship. So think about this too also. The great year divides itself into those 4 seasons marked by the bull, the lion, the eagle, and the man. A human lifetime can be thought of as naturally dividing itself into 4 seasons, each of which would be an average of 18 years. So, and correlating with spring, summer, winter, and fall. Or the golden age, the silver age, the bronze age, and the iron age. I mean, you can begin setting up all of these patterns of correlation once you begin to insert the idea of the human scale into these greater celestial patterns and greater celestial cycles.
So we're really at the end of the great year, right? Towards the year.
I wouldn't say we're at the end, because nobody really knows.
Exactly.
Right. But let's go on. We'll go on a few more. What do you want to go? About 10 more minutes, okay?
It's 9:10 right now.
Okay, so I think we were going to go no further than 9:30. Okay, a parallel was drawn between the yearly and cosmic cycles.
Can we take this back down?
Oh, yeah, you could, sure. A parallel was drawn between the yearly and cosmic cycles. Thus, the vernal beginning of the year was equated with dawn, birth, and youth, and with the creation of the world. On the other hand, winter was associated with night, old age, and death, and with a disastrous end of the world's duration. 12,000 years basically is half of a cycle. The analogy of nature as seen in the vernal flowers springing up after the desolation of winter, of the saplings sprouting from the fallen trunk, of life everywhere rising from death, suggests the belief in epochs of nature, elaborated by ancient philosophers into the cycles of the Stoics, the great days of Brahm, long periods of time rounded off by sweeping destructions, the cataclysms and ekpyroses of the universe. And Plato said, there have been and will be again many destructions of mankind, arising out of many causes. The greatest have been brought about by the agencies of fire and water, and other lesser ones by innumerable other causes. I'm going to jump ahead for a few minutes and show you this rhythmical, well, we're already here. Okay. So now we can see the scientific model and how it's confirming this idea of the summer and winter of the great year. And here we have, this is actually kind of old. I'm sure I could come up with some better graphics, but it certainly conveys what we're looking at. We're suspended over the Atlantic Ocean. We're looking at the Western Hemisphere more or less as it would look now, with sea ice over the Arctic Ocean. Does everybody oriented? Can you see what we're looking at here? There's Florida, right? The Caribbean. Here's the Appalachians, the Great Lakes, Hudson Bay, Greenland, Iceland, the British Isles, France. The Mediterranean is over here. Here's the Horn of Africa, South America, right? Okay. So you'll notice that in the Northern Hemisphere, the primary mass of ice is what covers Greenland. And the ice mass in Greenland is pretty impressive. It gets up to close to 2 miles thick over the summit. This is sea ice, which fluctuates seasonally and over the decades and so forth. It's floating on the top of the Arctic Ocean. There's a certain kind of interesting symmetry when you start looking at the planet. A lot of interesting symmetries. I'll just point out one, is that when you look at the Northern Hemisphere, what you've got is ocean surrounded by land. And when you look at the Southern Hemisphere, you've got a continent swaddled in ice surrounded by ocean. So there's a symmetry going on there. The South Pole has a huge ice cap on it. However, that huge ice cap was not as massive as the huge ice cap that mantled the planet during the 12,000 year cycle previous to the last 12,000 or 13,000 years. This is probably about what it would have looked like during the age of Scorpio. Sea level would have been much lower. All of that ice, of course, is formed out of water, frozen water that ultimately had its source in the ocean basins. And so in order to freeze up that much water on land, what does it do to ocean levels? It goes down by how much, roughly? Anybody know? I know you probably know. Don't say until. Give everybody else a chance. And when they don't know, I'll call upon you, Cameron. Anybody know? How much did sea level drop during the glacial maximum that we see right here? You know, don't you, Alon?